Okay, I think we have a good number of people joined, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Maddox's webinar on creating the ultimate QBR, where we'll be covering all the tips and best practices your team needs in order to conduct successful QBRs. Our speaker today is Spencer Davison. He's the head of technical account management at Maddox. I'm personally really excited that we're getting to hear from Spencer today because he has a ton of experience doing QBRs, including prior to Maddox, where he was part of the LinkedIn's Insights team. There, he developed tailored reports for customer success teams and saw how, if QBRs are successfully done, they could lead to increased engagement and revenue. So without further ado, here's Spencer.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here today. Like Bex mentioned, I head up the technical account management team. So I have seen many QBRs from our customers. I've seen what goes into the most successful ones and some tips and tricks to make yours even better. And that's what we'll be covering today. All right, but before we do, pop quiz time. So we have a quiz here. There'll be a link in the chat as well if you go to that link. And it's just a quiz to see how you're doing with QBRs today. We'll give everyone a bit of time to go to this link, take the quick quiz, and it'll basically be an assessment on scale of, I think, 1 to 10 to see how you've been performing and what maybe you could be doing better. So if everyone doesn't mind going to that link in the chat, we can take a moment, take the quiz, and then we'll get back together and just if everyone doesn't mind just popping in the comments how they did, or if they don't want to share that, feel free to just share any insights that they might have gleaned from their results. Oh, it's a scale of 1 to 13. We like to do things a little bit differently here at Maddox. So just as a quick recap of what we're looking at here. So 13 points or higher, you're doing great. You're really hitting all the benchmarks we like to see from an ideal QBR. If you're at 12 points, it looks like you're on the right track. You're using a lot of the key insights that we see in typical QBRs, like leading with value, benchmarking, and things like that. 10 to 11, there's room for improvement. So that could be either things like having a little bit more context on the data and insights you're showing, to making sure that there's insights and that is directly related to value. If you're 9 points or less, don't worry. That's what we're here to cover today. QBRs are not one size fits all a lot of the times. But there are core components that we like to see in a lot of them. And that's what we'll be going over today. So yeah, if anybody doesn't mind sharing any insights or feedback they have in the chat, feel free to, and we'll call some out. Anyone having any issues with the link, also just let us know in the chat. We're happy to take a look. All right, how's everyone doing? Anyone you want to give a thumbs up? Have they finished it up? Hannah has a nice little emoji status there. Well, that's not bad. Bronze star. What is the 9 points or less get, Hannah? Is it the bronze? That's fair. That's fair. So everybody's a winner. Everyone's on the podium. Looks like there's a gold medal there in some cases. Okay. All right, great. Happy to move on. Anybody want to share any insights though? Any interesting takeaways? Again, feel free to post it in the chat if so. What we typically see with our customers when we're coming in is, they'll typically be like the, B, C range, and we try to make sure that they're being up leveled. A lot of times, and I think this is probably going to resonate with a lot of people here, is they've seen every type of QBR put together. We used to call them like Frankenstein decks, where it'd be like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, no real cohesion or narrative. But that's really what like standardization is all about. It's all about replicating success and scaling where you can scale. Obviously, the more customized, the better. But when you can mix the customization with scale, then you're really winning, and that's what we're trying to do here at Matic. All right, I'll go ahead and move on. If anyone has any thoughts, questions, feel free to reach out to us directly after the webinar. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? Number one, why should you care about QBRs? QBRs are short for quarterly business reviews, but they don't necessarily need to be quarterly. A lot of people just refer to them as executive business reviews. And the reason for that is the audience should be an executive audience. Any sort of business review with the right audience and the right content can lead to a higher likelihood of expansion and a higher likelihood for renewal as well. Second thing we're going to be discussing today are what the musts are for successful QBRs. So what should you absolutely have to be successful in them? Of course, that also relates to what you should not do. So that's the third thing we'll be talking about today. So these are basically the don'ts of a business review. Fourthly, we're going to be walking through a best in class, you could say, QBR template. Now, this will be for a fake company that we use at Matic for demo purposes. The data you'll see obviously won't be relevant to you, but the structure of it, the content of it at a high level should be relevant for you. Now we're going to be going through what a QBR one-pager template is. These are really exciting for us because in times like this, where you feel like you have fewer resources at your disposal to have high-touch customer interactions, means that you need to be smarter with the type of interactions you do have. And a synthesized one-pager, which really takes in the key components of a strong QBR narrative into a streamlined infographic, can be really helpful for that. Lastly, we will give you guys a link for some resources. So that'll be kind of a kit for how to put together a well-constructed business review. All right, so the importance of business reviews. Number one is the alignment and engagement with key stakeholders. So your economic buyers, your decision makers at your accounts, they should all be part of your business reviews. A lot of times, the seller's inclination will be the path of least resistance for having a business review scheduled, which typically means you'll be maybe meeting with ICs or program managers. But you should really make sure that the executive audience is involved in these, because this is where you're talking about value. You're not just talking about the tactical components of your product or service. You're talking about the value that they're receiving, and you're talking about their business goals. So again, the better the audience you have in here, it means the more value you're going to get from the business review, and the more value they're going to see out of your product or service. The second reason why it's important is to reiterate the progress being made. Once after the buying decision is made, a lot of the leadership that you might have been involved with during that buying decision is taking a step back. But it's important to re-engage them to make sure the momentum that was built during the buying decision is being held all the way through renewal. And that they are aware that this isn't, a product or service that they bought and don't have any visibility in how it's performing. So again, really reiterating why it's important, maintaining the value that you built in that sales process, and showing the value that it's delivering is a key reason why business reviews are important. Third reason, it's really an opportunity to showcase how they can build on the success that they've already seen. So this could be a couple different things. This could be adopting more features. It could be a path to upsell. It could be looking at other areas of or teams or organizations within their company that could be benefiting from your product or service. So really putting on display everything that they're doing today and everything they could be doing in the future is really important. And again, it's all about reinvigorating the audience and making sure that they are on the right path to either expansion or renewal. So what goes into a successful QBR? Number one is making sure that you're pre-wiring ahead of the right people. Ahead of the meeting, and that means doing it with the right people. So what we always like to do is make sure that there are champions that you're engaging with ahead of this meeting. Have you had a discussion with the program managers that you're working with on a more regular cadence? Do you have an idea of recommendations that are going to be valid for them going into this business review? Do you know what insights are going to be relevant for them, or are you just putting in the same insights in every single deck? Making sure that there is some sort of pre-wiring is really important. Part of that is just simply making sure that they have a pre-read. A lot of business reviews can be content rich, giving them the opportunity 24 or 48 hours in advance to have a pre-read of the content so you can really focus on a dialogue and not just a slide-by-slide read-through is really important. Second one I've talked about on the last slide, but again, it's all about making sure that there's realignment. A lot of times within your customers, things are happening behind closed doors that you were not aware of. There could be management changes. There could be business goals that are changing, things that you might not be privy to based on your regular contact with other people at an organization. This is your opportunity to really unlock the things that you don't see and making sure that if there is realignment that's needed, that it's actually happening during this business review. Reiterating their objectives and metrics as well. So you probably have gone in with business goals during like a kickoff meeting. Are those still relevant to them? Are the metrics that you're measuring still something that they care about? Or do you need to recalibrate? That's something that you should be more than willing to bring up and have a discussion around during these calls. Highlighting success is obviously the core component of a successful QBR. So what does that mean? That really means showcasing not only how their adoption is going or how the value they've received is being realized, but also how you can recommend future paths forward so they can even unlock more value. Sometimes these calls, if you're just highlighting success and you're not giving space for feedback, it can just feel like a one-way conversation. So while it's important to highlight success and important to give your recommendations, make sure that it's also a listening session. Asking questions and listening to them is just as important as what you're showcasing on the slides. The last one is next steps. So this is your opportunity to get tactical if that's relevant. Maybe speak to team XYZ about this. Maybe start to explore new use cases for them. Maybe start to unlock additional features that you think would be beneficial for their organization. Making sure that there is a clear next steps and this isn't just a conversation that happens in a vacuum and then is forgotten about. What not to do in a QBR. So, number one is something I've already mentioned, but just make sure that the right people are on the call. Like I said, I think we've all been in this situation where so-and-so, we find out last minute is not with the company. Maybe that's the economic buyer that you originally spoke to. Maybe that was your champion at an executive level that is no longer with the company. Making sure that you've got the right people on the call, not just the people that are willing to make time for the call, is key. Lack of proof. So this is really making sure that the adoption that you're showing of your product or your service is actually being backed up with data. So you can go in there with maybe really strong numbers, but you don't really have any testimonials from actual end users that say anything, tangible, or vice versa. You have anecdotal evidence of things going well, but you don't really have any data to support that. Or you've got both, but you don't actually show why that's valuable. Why is it valuable that they're spending X number of hours in your product? Why is it valuable that they've seen 40% weekly active users? That's where showing proof is important. And you really need those three components of actual anecdotal evidence, quantitative evidence, and then value-driven evidence. Complexity. So this is one that we can all be guilty of sometimes, where we don't really know what to present, so we just put in the kitchen sink. And that's when you can get really dense with these conversations and perhaps get too far into the weeds. If you have a 45-minute or an hour-long conversation, it should definitely be valuable for the audience that you're delivering this to. So the more complex it is, the more it may detract from the key takeaways you're hoping they get from your business review. So think about the complexity of the slide. When you're looking at a slide, is there a key takeaway? Is it just, am I able to look at that slide on my own and within 10, 20 seconds understand what this slide is telling me? Think about those things, and then think of it holistically as a whole as well. When I finish from the whole presentation, do I see a narrative that I'm being brought along, or do I just see a bunch of disparate points of proof that don't really feel like a cohesive whole? And then the last one is inconsistency. So this can mean a variety of things, but how I kind of think about inconsistency is where you do have a lack of cohesion, but you're also inconsistent with the customer journey that they're being brought along. Is from your kickoff to your check-ins, to your business reviews, to your goals, are you bringing them along a journey, or does it feel like disparate conversations being had in a vacuum? All right, so let's take a look at what we see and again, this is more of a streamlined QBR template, but this is sort of what we see from a design perspective, from a content perspective, and in a good business review. So again, agenda slide is always important, but I don't need to really reiterate that to the people here, as everyone usually does have an agenda slide, but really making sure that you're outlining the conversation. I like to include an agenda just directly in the email. It might seem obvious to some people on the call, but it's not always obvious to everyone. Just making sure, like, these are the things that I want to cover in this meeting, and this is what I want to get out of it. So you can really think about this as, this meeting will be successful if blank. I like to always align on the team as well. So just like your customers' team may change, your team is probably changing as well. So making sure that you're reintroducing yourself. There might be new people on the call that don't know who you are, what you do. Making sure that they've got a name to the face is always important. Executive summaries. I can't stress the importance of executive summaries. A lot of times, a business review, if you're sending a pre-read out, this could be the entire presentation, is you spending time in the executive summary, going through the key points, and then going to certain slides if they want to dig in deeper. But Sometimes that's more challenging to do, and you want to go slide by slide, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the executive summary, to be honest, this might be the only slide that your audience is going to read ahead of the meeting. So it better be appropriate, and it better reflect the key takeaways that you want them to get away from it. So I really, really want to emphasize the importance of having a strong executive summary in place. What to include in the executive summary? Basically the high level takeaways from the sections of your presentation. You don't need to go slide by slide, but it should include some data proof. It should include some value that they're already seeing, and then some recommendations. Again, the content you see here is very streamlined, but it does kind of have the high level organization we see. As you'll kind of see throughout this deck, we generally like to live in the rule of threes here. So don't show them a lot of data points. If you are going to show them data points, make sure that it's relevant to the customer. After that, we do like to always just set the context, and that's typically setting context with some foundation data. So it's not exactly data that will be directly related to the value that they're receiving, but it does set the context. So in this example, we've got kind of baseline data around the number of licenses they purchase, onboarding, and then weekly active users. Again, it's setting a baseline of context here. What we also like to have here is, and it's not represented on this slide, but it's important here, is if you do have people coming into the meeting, make sure that you re-engage them with what you do and the value that your product or service brings. So in this case, it's kind of presupposing that the people on the call are familiar with your product or service. But in cases there aren't, making sure that you've got one slide on your value proposition as a company, and making sure that they understand what you're doing. Sometimes we take that for granted that everyone on the call knows, but can't tell you how many times I've been on calls where suddenly somebody jumps in last minute and they need to be, you need to reset the baseline. I always like to have some sort of time series or some sort of comparison pre to post when you start going into some of the data insights. So here you see the time series. Again, this is a fake company that we've created that is sort of a ticketing system like a Zendesk or a Jira. And why I like a time series set of insights is that it shows progress over time. This is helpful in seeing how they've evolved using your product, but it also kind of allows them to start thinking about how they're going to be evolving in the future. So it's kind of sets the foundation for, okay, this is what you've seen. Imagine if we increase your deployment. Imagine if we started looking at other use cases for our tool. It starts to set that conversation. So this is really where you can start getting into the nitty-gritty of the insights, and really start to have a valuable conversation. Simple stats like this too, like around, so-and-so is the most active user. We like to include that in there. Sometimes we'll include stats like a leaderboard, especially when, and this is really the gold standard, if you're able to get good quotes from an end user, and and they have good success stories, and then you see them top of the leaderboard in terms of the number, their activation in your product, that pairing can go so well and tell such a great story, and it also just gives a personal touch to the data. So you don't want to just show numbers. You want to make sure that there is some personal touch to it, that you're telling a story with the data that is resonant to the people on the call. Again, this is just another insight that you can share. This is a kind of a breakdown for this company on the different channels they use for their product or service. We try, again, both of these examples, you can kind of see our philosophy in showing data here. Again, you'll see the rule by three again, but we're not showing a ton of data. We see a chart here and 3 data points. If I look at this slide, I'm able to, within 20 seconds, get key takeaways of it. Okay, I see email as our channel with the highest resolution time. I see it takes around 10 minutes per ticket, 5 minutes to reply, and we have 78% satisfaction score. These are really helpful, but you'll see on the next slide, well, what does that mean? And this is something that we really strongly suggest in QBRs is if you're going to talk about this, the second question they're going to ask when they see data points like this is, well, how good is it? And so that's where benchmarking is really important. Benchmarking can be hard to do sometimes, either maybe because you have a lack of data or you're not sure, maybe the business KPIs are so different or so bespoke for each customer. But as much as you can do it, maybe you can't do it for every metric, but maybe you can do it for some. That's where you recommend thinking about how you can include benchmarks in your conversation, because ultimately customers don't really know if the numbers you're showing them are good or that they're just par for the course. So this is your opportunity to kind of set that standard. Recommendations. So like I said before, making sure that your recommendations are pre-wired with your champions. Sometimes we always do recommend having recommendations, but if you feel like they're not going to be relevant or that you haven't pre-wired them, then maybe it's time to just use this as an opportunity to have a dialogue. Here are some things that we typically see for customers that are your point of the customer journey. But where are you going? Where would you like us to be? As much as possible, you should try to validate these recommendations ahead of time, but we know sometimes that's not possible. But the more you can get insight into the relevancy of these, the more impactful they'll be when you actually deliver them. Lastly, we want to talk about some kind of feature adoption. And, this is something that you will hear a lot of varying opinions on, because you don't want to just throw features at customers and just talk about the features. That's one-on-one what people will say when they talk about having these conversations. But the caveat there is, if the features are going to actually lead to them getting more value out of your product, then you should talk about them, because then it's a conversation about, okay, if you adopt X, then you're going to see Y. Maybe, for this particular company, if they start taking advantage of different channels for tickets to be coming in inbound, they'll see a quicker resolution time of X. Then that's a great opportunity to talk about features. But if you're just talking about the channels they're not taking advantage of, then maybe that's not then you're not really setting the context of why it's important. So, be careful about how much features you show, because it could just turn into like one of those eye glazing conversations where you're using a bunch of niche terms nobody understands. But if you're tying it to why it's helpful, then by all means you should feel that it's an opportunity to showcase what features they're using and what they could be using. All right, let's talk about the QBR one-pager. So like I mentioned before, business reviews are great, but anybody will tell you that, if you're a mid-market rep and you have 50, 100 accounts, you could be spending every hour of your day doing a business review. So maybe you don't want to do that. Or maybe certain accounts, we know certain accounts are higher priority than others. That's where one-pager can be helpful. Where a one-pager could also be helpful is perhaps there's been organizational changes and you're having a hard time getting in touch with your customer. The so-called ghosting effect. In that case, maybe the best way to get in touch with a customer is to use the carrot of a one-pager to do so. Show them something that they actually care about with relevant data. So let's look at what a one-pager would look like. In this case, we've kind of taken everything you've seen in that business review deck that we showed earlier, And we've just kind of compiled into a very easy to digest one pager. So here it shows kind of the the deployment options that we talked about. We talk about some of the insights that we showed earlier, and then we just kind of gave them the baseline of their current contract. So again, this is a great opportunity to reach out to customers that may be ghosting you. It could be an opportunity to hold more frequent check-ins with customers that maybe you just can't make time for within your current schedule, or customers that are maybe lower priority, but you do still want to give that personalized touch to. So highly, we love one pagers here at Matic, especially when you can do them at scale. All right. Well, hey, it's been great sharing some of this with you, but we have even more to share with you. So we've got the ultimate QBR toolkit here. Feel free to whip out your phones and scan the QR code to receive it. In it, you'll find a lot of the things we chatted about today, but with much more in-depth guidelines on what you've seen. It's got a great resource for just design, but also for each slide that you see, it has a companion slide on why that slide is important. So couldn't recommend this QBR toolkit more, and feel free to download it, share it with your team.